What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Just actually watched the NBA lottery. It's one of the shadiest things I've ever seen. I mean, it really is. Listen, I'm a Laker hater, but I've never argued they are the biggest NBA brand, and honestly, it's not that close. Uh, that for them to get Luka in the middle of the night will go down forever and always as the craziest, most insane thing we've ever seen. And then a couple months later, the Dallas Mavericks that had 18 ping pong balls out of 1,000 get the number one pick, who's widely considered one of the best prospects, top two or three over the course post LeBron. I mean, listen, that's like taking your accountant out to dinner after he just saves you a bunch of money. Tonight was not about the Mavericks. Tonight and the last was about the Lakers and a league that, in the height of Curry, LeBron in like 2015, 2016, over the course of the next 7, 8 years, half the NBA's audience disappeared. Yet they got a contract with the television partners that more than doubled it. It didn't even make sense to me. And listen, I understand the power of live rights, but it's like double what? Well, what if we could promise you that the Lakers are LeBron's 40 years old? We know that, who knows, maybe a year left, two, who knows? He could retire. Probably not, but definitely a year at a high level. There's no guarantee. We'll take care of them. We will have them good. And boom, Luke is on the Lakers. And the Mavericks get the number one overall pick. People, for a long time, I think conspiracy theories were viewed as like crazy people. And listen, media people love, like, take your tinfoil hat. Like, we have a little bit of a runway now that a lot of things that were called crazy and conspiracy theorists have been proven to be facts. And you can't tell me that tonight, and going back to the trade with Nico and the Mavs, is not one of the shadiest sports moments and stories we've ever seen. And tonight felt like some validation of like, yeah, it all kind of makes sense. And if you don't think the league was involved, like, I'm sorry, we don't have much in common. I mean, really, we don't. And I don't blame, if I'm a Laker fan, I don't even care. I got myself Luka. Need to get him eating a couple salads here and there. But, like, we won. And if I'm a Mavs fan, it's like, yeah, it sucks. I'd probably rather have Luka. But it's like, we got taken care of. So it all worked out. And Adam Silver had his David Stern moment. No matter what, we will take care of the brand and keep our most important television product relevant. The NBA, and I've talked about this over, is not the NFL. It's teams in smaller markets are never going to do the numbers of the Lakers, of the Knicks, of what Steph Curry has turned the Warriors into. They cannot. Giannis on the Bucks. It's not the same as the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, 30 million people. I mean, that's what happens. The Bucks play, I don't know, the Pacers. People just aren't watching that. So I just think that Adam Silver had his David Stern moment. And it's one of the craziest, most obvious corrupt things we've ever seen in my entire life. You can call me Middlekauff, you're fucking insane. You're just saying that. There is no way you can convince me that the league was not involved with this trade. I honestly think a little bit less that Nico's some crazy person now. Like, it kind of all makes sense. It all makes sense. And if you wanted to argue that the NFL should involve itself in a lottery, that was riveting television. And now this storyline is everyone's going to be talking about it. And the league doesn't care. What are you going to do? Sue him? I'm sure Danny Ainge wants to. I mean, he's been tanking for like 3 years. Look what just happened. Shows you, man. Don't go work for the Utah Jazz and expect good things to happen to you if the league is going to be corrupt, because you're going to get screwed. Man, what a night in the NBA draft or lottery. Question for the mailbag. Which teams do you think have increased their ceiling and floor the most after the draft and free agency? I do think the team that stands out to me, and especially if you factor in the coach, I think there are two, and I think it's the Patriots and the Bears. I mean, just we know how important coaching is in the NFL, and Eberflus, I mean, let's face it, was kind of an embarrassment as a head coach. I mean, he's a good defensive coach. Gerard Mayo was just completely over his head. And those guys got Mike Vrabel, who's proven to take like random Tennessee teams to win playoff games. I'm pretty sure weren't the Titans the number one seed a couple years ago? Tannehill melted down, but yeah, the Titans are the number one overall seed. I mean, think about that. And the Bengals, nice little upset on their way to the Super Bowl. But in Ben Johnson's, I would say the most highly touted offensive coordinator probably since Kyle. People forget like Sean McVay was a controversial hire. People did not view Sean McVay when he was hired, myself included. I'm guilty, like the way he became. Kevin O'Connell, when he was hired, wasn't viewed like he's viewed now. Brian Daboll, a lot of hype behind Brian Daboll. So you could say maybe since Brian Daboll was hired with the Bills coming from Josh Allen. But I mean, Ben Johnson's one of the most hyped offensive coordinators, I would just say, of recent memory. So I think they've added a bunch of offensive linemen. They draft the tight end from Michigan. Uh, they already had good players on the team. So I think the Bears roster is better than the Patriots. But I think when you look at the Patriots, could they win 8, 9 games and all of a sudden go from drafting back to back years really high to competing for a wild card spot in December? I don't think it's outrageous. Derek Carr, according to ChatGPT, he missed only 2 games when he played for the Raiders. The concussion and injuries were all with the Saints. During his 9-year tenure with the Raiders in Vegas and Oakland, 14 to 22, he missed 2 games due to injury. Notably, in 2016, he suffered a fractured leg. I remember that. We talked about that yesterday, causing him to miss the regular season finale in the playoff game. In 17, he sustained a back fracture, but missed just 1 game. Overall, Carr was remarkably durable. I think his career with the Raiders a little underrated. He took a lot of blame for the dysfunction going on, and I'm not saying he didn't have bad games, but I would say he was the least of their worries most of the time. Uh, I can't speak to every game he played in the Saints. That obviously got a little weird, but big fan of the pod. Question for the bag. I'm going on my first bachelor party for a few weeks in Fort Lauderdale. In a few weeks, not for a few weeks. For younger people these days, a co-ed bachelor party is popular, and this one is co-ed. I'm going with my girlfriend, but just wanted some tips for not overindulging on the 3-day bender and other courtesies you've seen over the years for bachelor parties in general. Picking up the tab, handling people that may be downers and may not want to go with the flow. Go Vikings. I got to be completely honest. Maybe I truly sound like a 40-year-old completely out of touch. Though I just got married recently. When you say a co-ed bachelor party, do you mean a bachelor and a bachelorette party together? Like, do you mean that the bachelor party and the bachelorette party are going on at the same time, which would be less crazy to me, which I would imagine has happened before in a similar venue, maybe for cost purposes? Or do you just mean that your buddy's bachelor party is co-ed, meaning you can bring your girlfriends or they just come? I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that. So I don't want to speak out of turn here because if it's a bachelor party, not a bachelorette party, and it's co-ed, that seems weird to me. Like I think you can go to a bachelor party. Is it because they don't trust you guys? Um, I got a red flag that situation. That's something I can't relate to. I mean, not that you. That seems weird to me. Part of a bachelor party, whether you're going bar hopping, clubbing, golfing, boating, whatever you're doing, is like you with the boys. You with your good friend. You're in the wedding. You're close friends with the guy. Your college roommates, people from high school, whatever. Never heard of a co-ed operation. I would say I think the hard part with courtesies, it depends on ages. Like if you're all, I don't know how old you are. Let's just, once you get to in your mid to late 30s, some people are going to be doing better than others. So when you go, again, non co ed, let's say you got 12, 15, 10, guys at a nice steakhouse, maybe, people can kind of get crazy, start ordering seafood towers and a bunch of food, and then the bill comes, and there might be one dude who's, I mean, making a ton of cash, and a couple other guys that, don't make any money. So that's where it can get kind of weird. I think you got it. There's no really right or wrong way to kind of handle that. I think sometimes just communicate. Like, what are we cool with spending? I only got a couple $100 to spend at dinner. If this thing gets outrageous, I got to be out. Some people are always going to be up and down in terms of like being into stuff and being not into stuff. I would say anytime that, if you have the means, can get, it's pretty easy to get the group around the beers. I do, again, like, does that include their girlfriends now? That's where I'm kind of taken back. I feel very old if this is in, because it's one thing if you got 10 dudes, it's like, hey, we get a round of beers, can we get some cocktails, can we get some shots? And it's like, does that 10 now turn into 20 because they got their ladies there? I also would imagine there are going to be some single guys there. Could be a little weird. I'm fascinated. I need to follow up on that, the co-ed thing. Never heard of that. The NBA 82 game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for the high stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw dropping plays. Can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through the finals. Now, the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been your go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will Curry drop 30? Will LeBron drop 40? Or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make the playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Hearing about Derek Carr retirement reminded me of when Colin used to have the opinion that he'd be a Hall of Famer one day. Seeing as Carr amassed an 0-1 playoff record, I think it's safe to say that was a horrible take. What has been your worst takes on a player? I mean, I thought Derek was like clearly better than the group he was in of like Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, not that long ago, 5-6 years ago. And then over the course of his career, I don't think anyone would put him above. I don't know. I don't remember Colin saying he'd be a Hall of Famer, but I would have been in agreement of speaking pretty highly of Derek after a couple years. Um, I mean, I wasn't that big on Lamar Jackson coming out of college. I thought Jalen Hurts was a running back. I mean, I thought he couldn't throw. I'm an Oklahoma guy. The guy that hired me at Fresno State, I've said this a million times, works there. I've watched their program very closely with Baker Mayfield to Kyler to Jalen. Might be a little out of order there. I went to the Texas-Oklahoma game this year. I watched them lose by like 100. Like, I follow Oklahoma's program, and obviously it was easy. People like Jalen. I just didn't think he could throw it well enough. I thought that pick was crazy. I thought that pick by Howie in the second round was insane. I think it's fair to say it's going to go down. I mean, when you factor in how important that position is, I mean, that could define Howie Roseman's career. So that one would be up there. I mean, that'd be really high. Is there an unexpected team next season that you can see picking in the top five? For example, we can all see where the Saints, the Giants, the Browns, etc., would be picking in the top five. I think the team that I'm going to stay on is Miami. I think Miami is just a team to keep an eye on. I just can't get over this co-ed bachelor parties. I think Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. I've watched Adrian Peterson carry the Vikings offense and a rotating door of failed quarterbacks all my life. Cousins was decent, but I've always been looking for a franchise quarterback. Drafted and with the team for a decade. Seeing O'Connell's offensive success with a handful of quarterbacks, I'm hoping JJ is our guy. I know you want to see a playoff win with O'Connell, but is his true test going to be developing JJ and setting him up for success? If JJ fails, do you think people will blame O'Connell? Would like to hear your thoughts. Love the pod. My wife is from Davis. I'm from Chico. We met at Cal Poly, and we lived in SLO for 10 years. We just moved to Denver, and my commute requires your podcast. Go Mustangs, baby. I don't even know why I say that. I mean, their teams are terrible, but cool. I enjoy my fellow Cal Poly brethren. Uh, awesome to meet your wife there. That's cool. I would say I think sometimes who's it going to fall on? We just got to see how this plays out. Like, I totally understand why they drafted him. Their team is going to be competitive. When you're the head coach, if things get weird, it always kind of falls on you. I do think Kevin O'Connell established himself with Cousins and Sam Darnold that even if this next couple years gets weird, I think JJ will get blamed. Now, it's easy to blame like Trey Lance. It turns out Trey Lance wasn't good, but the reason Kyle kind of could go like, well, not totally, because Purdy fell into his lap. So if JJ fails, which I don't think he will, if I was a betting man, is he going to be a star? I don't know if I'd go that way far, but I mean, more than likely, I feel pretty confident that they'll get like some version of Alex Smith, right? That's what I would bet on. Now, obviously, you'd want more, and maybe it turns out to more. I'd be stunned if he's like Zach Wilson, right, or Trey Lance. But listen, it's football. Not every guy's going to succeed. Some of these guys in this class are going to fail, right? Was Caleb, Jaden, Drake, Penix, Nix, JJ. Well, we all think Jaden's good. Everyone assumes Drake's good, and Willie Colon kind of pushed back against that. Caleb, I think people are still very bullish on him. Bo Nix, everyone's high on. I'm rooting for Michael Penix, but that organization, even if four of them succeed, two of them are going to fail. So, yeah, I think the quarterback would get blamed over Kevin. Just heard someone write you saying Milroe last season and compared him to Lamar in their final season of college. Jalen could be the next Lamar, but to say his final season is comparable is pretty disrespectful to Lamar. Just look at the stats: rushing yards, passing touchdowns, not even close. So let's look at the stats. They both played 13 games. Passing yards, Lamar threw for about 800 more. Completion percentage, Milroe, who's considered the thing with Lamar, sneaky, a little inaccurate in college, was under 60%. Passing touchdowns, 27 to 16. Picks, same thing, 11 and 10. Rushing yards, Lamar was 16. Rushing touchdowns, Jalen had 20. Yeah, I mean, listen, I do think the way Jalen Milroe's season was talked about, his stats do look better than the way we discussed the season. I'm guilty of it. I was like, yeah, Jalen looked terrible this year. And maybe I'm just basing it off of like a couple interactions. Besides the first half of Georgia, he was elite. First half of Georgia, I mean, if he would have played like that, the majority he would have won the Heisman and they would have been in the playoffs. But then you'd watch other games, you're like, what is going on here? New offense, it was kind of weird. I mean, when you think what I mean, think about DeBoer with Penix. It's just a lot different than Jalen, right? Penix is a pocket quarterback. Jalen is much more of a run around Lamar type player. My question is regard to the quarterback position and what makes them an all time great. Bradshaw has 4 rings and Aikman has 3, but they are not considered a top 10 quarterback. But people will consider Dan Marino a top 10 quarterback. How much emphasis should be put on Super Bowl? I would say Terry's before my time. I was born in '84, never watched him play. Dan, I came into my own in the mid '90s. He was old. I would say this about Dan Marino is working in the league and working with a lot of players that played in the '80s and the '90s, like Todd Bowles or Lewis Riddick, or these guys that played defense that were drafted in the '80s. That said, when you played Dan Marino, his ball would come by your head like a sniper rifle. You'd be like, what is that? The way his peers discussed him tells you everything you need to know. I think Dan Marino's respect from his peers is as high as it gets. I would say, as someone that rooted against the Cowboys as a kid, I thought Troy Aikman was pretty good. Now, I think Troy Aikman and Terry Bradshaw are discussed of like, well, Terry Bradshaw played with the Steel Curtain, which Not talking about the offense, talk about the defense. So one of the great defenses in the history of the sport. I mean, a defense that was literally nicknamed and won 4 Super Bowls. Now, he had good receivers. He had a good Franco Harris, Stallworth, Lynn Swan, some legendary throws. I think people consider him a really good player, but I think if you were drafting, the guys that you discussed in the top 10, I think Marino is getting chosen over both those two guys. And I think Troy Aikman or Terry Bradshaw would tell you, you put Dan Marino in his prime on the teams we played in, he would have done what we did as well. Like I don't think they would push back against that, right? But think about the top 10 quarterbacks. Who are you kicking out? Brady, Peyton, Favre, Rodgers, Elway, Marino, Young. Uh, it's hard for me to talk about guys I didn't watch, right? So it's the 70s. I don't feel as comfortable. I know people like Joe Namath is a name we throw out a lot. Namath is like a Ruthian figure, though the difference is like Ruth hit however many 715 home runs. Namath, I think, threw the same number of touchdowns as picks. I've always heard from older people that either watched or are coming into their own that Namath a little overrated. Stallback is a highly respected guy. Kenny the Snake. Um, who am I missing? Guys like Drew Brees. Then you got to look at the crew now. Mahomes is, I'd say, already a top 10 quarterback. Josh Allen and Lamar are going to go down as legends. You can be a great, like, what if Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both never win Super Bowls? I think we'd all agree, like, they are great players. How do you feel about how ironic it is that during the Manning cast last year, Belichick scoffed when the camera panned to Taylor Swift? Now he has the girlfriend in the spotlight the TV cameras will be looking for. Yeah, good call. I just think that this Belichick Jordan story is kind of getting exhausting now. Like it's funny for a while. Now it's like, give me a break. Like, what are we talking about? It does come up a lot. I mean, I was in this golf tournament. We talked a lot about it. I do understand if you were his kids, right? Like if I was Belichick's son, seeing like his one of Belichick's kids' wives comment on an Instagram account and be like, Dad, I don't give a shit if you leave me one penny. I don't care if you Warren Buffett, give it all to charity. Give it all to whatever. Fund cancer research. Help out the homeless. Uh, save, dog kennels. Whatever you got to do with your money. But don't give it to her. Like this is insane. We have seen a lot of old rich men in your position, which I would imagine if they were in their prime would regret what you're about to do. That to me has turned the conversation of like, what is she really after now? I don't recall. Uh, this is about the Bengals rookies sitting. Is this more emblematic of the Bengals as an organization or the players themselves? Based on the article that I read, that the Bengals had lowballed them based on last year's contract, I think it's a little less crazy, though the Bengals can't be the first organization to have a little bit of an impasse, and it never happens. I will defend the kids on this, whether it's sitting out rookie minicamp, which is crazy when you read that headline, whether it's none of these guys running the 40. This is not the player's idea. None of this is the player. At 20, 21 years old, this is not your idea. I promise you. I feel very confident on that. This is all the agent telling them not to do it. This is an agent run decision making. I don't think any of these guys not running the 40 are doing it because they don't want to run the 40. I think it's all their representation telling them. Going back to Nico transferring out of Tennessee, I think he did that because of his father. So you have all these people that have their hand in your cookie jar that are determining your decisions, which as a young man at 19, 20, 21 years old, like most people aren't General Patton making their own decisions here. You're very impressionable human beings when you're young. So it's like you get this guy that's a 50-year-old agent giving you advice, you're going to listen to him. Some of this NIL stuff with your dad or your uncle, you're just going to listen to them. Whether they're right or wrong, I thought Cam Newton summed it up a while back well. It's like you got to be very careful who you take advice from. Be fucking careful. I think a lot of these guys are getting advice that, like, bro, you get an insurance policy. We're not tackling here. Does it get you off on the wrong foot? And I understand it's just business, but is this your decision or is this, your agent that lives in Newport Beach? After watching Willie Cologne's interview, I checked out some of the '08 Steelers highlights, and that defense was insane. You got to see Ryan Clark absolutely destroy Wes Welker. It's one of the biggest hits I've ever seen. I'm shocked that he actually got up. They called a flag on the play, but just knowing that you had to go over the middle against that defense must have been terrifying. With guys like James Harrison and Troy Polamalu, do you think modern NFL teams could even hang with that roster? And if so, which team today could actually compete against that kind of roster? Well, if you think about like in the 2000s and the 90s, and I would even say up through like 14, 15, CTE kind of came in and then the league changed the rules. Because even up until like when I got out of the NFL and started working in radio, the 49ers in Seattle would leave a player at least once every other game or once a month, send them to the hospital. So you had these safeties that if you came across the middle, there was no flag. They were going to rock you into oblivion. There was no such thing as a defenseless player. If you were on the field, you were just a football player. And I just think that it's not even possible to compare because the Steelers, just like the Ravens, the Bengals built these teams that would destroy you. The Seattle with Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, the 49ers with Dante Hittner and Goldson. I mean, and Bowman and Willis, these fucking people would get rocked. You're not really able to play like that. I mentioned this the other day on the mailbag that I get asked a lot in Arizona about Scadaboo. And they're like, how's Scadaboo going to play like he played? I'm like, well, because he's not running over. Ray Lewis is not sitting there in the hole. Levon Kirkland and Kevin Green and Ken Norton Jr., like these guys don't play in the league. The linebackers, like Fred Warner's a very violent, powerful linebacker. He's not exactly Mr. Take on offensive lineman, meet Mike Allstott and Lorenzo Neal in the whole type of player. Like, so the style of the sport is skinnier, faster guys. It's a space and speed game. So those guys, if they played by their rules, one, if you allowed big hitting in the league, a lot of safeties would destroy people. And the game would be a lot more violent. Because at their core, a lot of safeties, like if you let big hits like Hufunga wants to rock CJ Gardner Johnson, like these guys want to rock they just you're not really allowed to. So it just depends. Like the rules, if you allowed those teams to play by those rules, they would have an advantage because they're comfortable doing that. You're just not allowed to play like that anymore. So it's hard to do like an apples to apples comparison. It really, it's like a different sport. Mailbag question. I've heard you and many of your contemporaries, wonder who my contemporaries are, prop up Herbert. For what it's worth, I was high on him. But after 6 years in the league, it's actually 5, but I hear what you're saying. 2 playoff appearances and 2 horrible showings, including one historic collapse. At what point does somebody's talent and draft pedigree become a little overrated? I feel like most people right now would take Herbert over Hurts to start a franchise based on talent. But look at Hurts' production in the playoffs. How could you realistically take Herbert? I think sometimes it's hard. We just use the Marino, Aikman, Bradshaw example. Google Marino's teams. Like they just weren't as good. I mean, Troy Aikman played on some of the best teams in league history. Steve Young, when he took over for Joe Montana, they had backups that would have started at every team in the NFL, including himself. So, like the league, some of these teams, it's not fair fight. This isn't. Not everything's equal here. And I think the Eagles are a good example of like, he plays on a pretty unreal team. So you use this example. He's been in the league 5 years. For 4 of those years, he had Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley as his head coach. This year, he had a real head coach and still didn't have that much talent on his best receiver is Lad McConkey. And he threw 23 touchdowns, and I think he only threw like 3 or 4 interceptions. And they won 11 games. Awful in the playoffs. If you want to argue that Jalen's a bright lights, big time player more than Herbert, I can't argue with you. And the facts are that's true right now. But I've seen 1 year, one of Herbert with a real coach, and he had a lot of success. Bad playoff game, but a ton of success. Jalen Hurts got drafted into a well run organization. I think we all consider Howie, if he's not the best GM, one of the best GMs in the league. They have had, since Jalen has been there, one of the best rosters. And for 2 of his 3 years, the 2 Super Bowl years, he had Shane Steichen, who immediately became a head coach. And then this year, Kellen Moore, who immediately became a head coach. Now, are those guys good head coaches? Got no clue. They're good offensive coordinators. So, like, I think sometimes we talk about this, and it's sports, it's a fun argument, but it's not basketball, right? Like, if I get LeBron James or Steph Curry in his prime, it's not going to be that hard to put random guys around him and just be really competitive, right? And more often than not, if I get him one All Star, we're going to be cooking with gas. Look at Jokic. Jokic has never played with an NBA All Star ever in his career. How many Pro Bowlers did Jalen play with this year? How many Pro Bowlers did skill guys? Saquon, best running back in the league. AJ Brown, one of the best wide receivers in the league. I mean, Devontae's got to be, top three, number two wide receiver in the league. Goddard's a really good tight end. Elite offensive line. Probably the best tackle combination. Dickerson and Jurgens. Becton just got money as a free agent. Best O line coach. And again, I've come around on Jalen. I respect the shit out of him. But like, it's hard to just compare the situation. Now let's give him 2 more years, Herbert, with and see how it looks with Jim Harbaugh, a real organization. Because now the Chargers feel like they're a real organization. The playoff games are bad. Won't argue with you there. Do you think Burrow gets enough respect? Allen and Lamar are combined 0-3 against Mahomes in the AFC Championships, and Burrow is 1-1. Burrow has better wide receivers, but Allen and Jackson have better overall rosters, coaches, and front offices. Still, I think if you give Mahomes true serum, he'd say Burrow scares him more in an AFC Championship game than the other two. Yet Allen and Jackson get mentioned more as Mahomes' rivals in the AFC by the media. Curious what your take is on the pod. I know for a fact the Chiefs' respect level for Josh Allen could not be any higher. They view Josh Allen as an absolute mother, you know what, to go up against. And while they didn't play this version of Lamar, who definitely, last year the Lamar game in the AFC Championship game was embarrassing. There is no way about it. Scored 10 points with an elite defense. You hold them to 17 points. You have to win that game. The turnovers this year kind of suck, but he played really well in the second half. Like that version of Lamar can beat anybody. And if Andrews holds on to the balls, they would have a chance against the Chiefs in the next round. But those guys, like, I think all three go together. I think, and I'm with you. Burrow gets dinged because of the place in which he plays. A little weird. I mean, he plays in just a chaotic environment, and the Bengals are very, very lucky to have him. Because if they just had like an average quarterback with the roster in which they had and the coaching staff they had, like you gave them like a Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins, I don't think they'd win sniff 7-6 wins. They'd be terrible. Jamar Chase would be screaming, "Get me the hell out of here." I think all three, Mahomes, his resume is, I mean, borderline unprecedented to start a career. The other three guys are just, they're all timers. And if Lamar can just not calm down a little bit in the playoffs, listen, I'm biased. I had 5K on them to beat the Chiefs. And I fucking have known Andy and Veach for a long time. I bet against them. And I can't unsee that. I can't. I also took the Bills against the Chiefs in that AFC Championship this year. Hard for me to unsee that one. So I hear you. So Burrow's the only guy that beat him, and Burrow easily could have won the Super Bowl. Lifelong Bucks fan. I consider the Monte Kiffin defense top five all time, if not top three. Barber, Brooks, Lynch, Rice, Sapp, their stats are crazy. Am I just biased? Also, why is the fullback not a thing anymore? Mike Allstott is my all-time favorite player and is an all-time uh in a time of the tush push seems like it would work. Allstott was guaranteed half a yard player. I would say in I can't speak to the really the 80s and the 90s, or excuse me, the 70s and the 80s. I think if you look at the totality of the league, like a historian, if I got Steve Sable, God rest his soul, he'd tell you you'd be hard pressed to not have the Steelers really, really high of the 70s. I think the 85 Bears, it's like, could this guy make the 27 Yankees? Right? That's the way that lineup, like Ruth and Gehrig, is the way that people talk about defense. The 85 Bears to me is the bar. Then I think there are a lot of teams just in the mix, right? Modern day that I've seen. I would say the Ravens of 2000, whatever you want to consider that best defense of Tampa. I mean, they picked off Rich Gannon five times in the Super Bowl. Now, granted, Gruden knew the plays. The Steelers defenses with Cowher to Tomlin were pretty unreal. I think the Seattle defense with Pete Carroll for 4 straight years was the number one scoring defense. You know, if Richard Sherman was sitting right here, he'd throw their hat. They were good. I saw them live a bunch. I mean, they had inside pass rushers, outside pass rushers. Linebacking core was unreal. All the DBs were good. Pete Carroll, one of the great defensive minds in league history. I think some of those Patriot. I mean, they're just in the short list of just they're a great defense. I think most people would just say the best defense of all time, 85 Bears. And then from there, I think we argue. But and I think Tampa's in the argument, whether they're second, whether they're fourth, whether they're fifth, but they're in the argument. But I think pretty clearly, it's like who's the best NBA player of all time? Michael Jordan. You want to argue 2 through 8? Let's argue. But most people ain't budging. You know, remove Twitter for fucking LeBron James. Starts with Michael Jordan, just like the Bears, 85 Bears. Then let's have an argument for the next 3 or 4 spots. Appreciate everyone listening. Talk to you guys soon.